G'day, everybody. Okay, we're going to kick off. First up, I'd love to acknowledge that we're on Gumbunya country, and in Gumbunya country we say G'day to say welcome. Have a go at that one. G'day. It's a beauty, isn't it? Love it. I love Nambucca when in this area because they've got G'day Way, haven't they, as their road to go into Nambucca. And then when you get to the beach, all the signage is in language, all in an artful way as well. And it's just beautiful. It's nice to see language, living language, an ancient language, living. So, G'day to everyone. I want to acknowledge that here we are on Gumbunya country and how glorious it is. And it's been beautiful. Last week, if we had been here, it would have been teeming down with rain. But for the Waste Conference this year, country has turned it on. Weather's been great. And I think also in the tradition of oral history of the Gumbunya people, there's been a lot of oral history going on here with networking and people having conversations and having many conversations that are entering deeper into us because we're face to face and things become, I know there's lots of conversations, but I think that when we get a chance to gather as a community and share words together, I think that's so impactful for us in the work that we do often in isolation. So I'd love to pay my respects to all of the elders, past and present, who have cared for country and continue to care for country, and just want to reiterate, I like iterate as a word too, but reiterate what Uncle said on the first word. On the first session, if you didn't hear it, about the middens, and it's been a conversation that lots of people have been having with me, that the middens conversation, that the last food eaten was an encouragement to say that food was in plentiful, that conversation was, don't eat this fella because we ate him, find something else to eat, right? So I just love that because it's kind of contrary to how the other system thinks. So I just wanted to remind us of that on our last day and remember that we are learning and growing together and how fun that is. If you were at my first session, it's okay, you're not going to be bored by my slides because I forgot to show them. I just got into yarning mode. I was just like, yeah, whatever. Oh, I've got to be really careful too. I don't know if you saw in Black As, that comedy show that was on ABC, that gorgeous actress who she pretends she's Indigenous because she's got an Indigenous boyfriend, and how awkward that whole scene is, I have to sometimes remind myself, just because we hang out with mob heaps, there's a lot of, and I love the word yarning. It just says so much more than speaking out or presenting, because yarning is a two-way street. But I don't want you to think that I'm, turning into some obnoxious person at the same time. So welcome. Change the story, change the world is the kind of my fascination, has been my fascination for the last couple of years. And also that three-pillar approach. So the workshop that we're going to do today, which is really about changing the narrative and growing identity. You know how I said at the first day that just behaviours, just random behaviours, throwing them out there, even if people kind of start changing sort of some behaviours, we don't get that long-term sticky change that we're all searching for, because that word is identity. And so can we shift the way we're thinking about education to really about growing identity? Because once we've got an identity, once it's a value and an identity, then it becomes easier for community to make choices because they're not wondering, they know who they are, and when they know who they are, they will do things, even if it changes. So for example, if we had our identity as we are composters, that when it was said, okay, we made a bit of a mistake with the whole paper and stuff going into composting, we're going to take that out of the system now, and we're going to go back to what we thought originally, that it should just be food and garden waste, plants, food and animal leftovers, but not dog poo, or people poo. And then basically if we had have had this identity as a community that we were composters, then that would have just been a kind of a tweak that we were doing, rather than a huge disaster. They don't know what they're doing, what are we doing now? I'm so confused, I'm just not going to do it anymore. And so I suppose that's why I bang on about the identity thing, because I think when we get this right as educators, I think we're going a long way. I think people will appreciate it too, that if we start talking about deep values. Connect, understand, act is my kind of pillar of change when it comes to behavioural change to get to that identity. That the connect, the connect is deeply seated in the story of Nature Connect. So trying to find a way, even in simple sentences, to bring that ecosystem story at the front of the conversation when we're speaking to community, then back it up with some good solid science, some understanding, and then lead to action. So what happens is when our communities have their hearts first, followed by their heads, second, then their hands are committed, right? Rather than just telling people what to do. We know this, that's why I'm not going to bang on about it for ages. It's just not something that Cate McQuillan thinks. Really, really good scientists, behavioural studies people go, this is it. This is the secret recipe, this direction all the time. Like that order. Just be boring. It's not boring anyway because there's so many possibilities you can do with it. New word for me that I'm totally in love with. Restorification. Now, first you might think it's restore as in restore. It's restorification, using story to change things. So using story. And mainstreaming the narrative. And this is the thing where heaps of people have been saying it at the conference. That's why I love talking about it. You can't be what you don't see. We've been saying it for 30 years. It's the truth, you know. So just showing, even thinking about, so first of all I'm going to say, hands up if you are at a council. Great, hands up if you're just a change maker. Right. And change maker and storyteller, of course. All right, good, cool. Every time we tell story, right, every time, even everything that we're doing, our own Facebook pages, whatever, modelling what is mainstreaming the things that we're thinking and valuing is really important. And I've been banging on with the TV industry this year and actually getting somewhere, because Screen Australia are going to try and put a line item in budgets that they fund that there has to be a level of environmental responsibility in the stories that are being told, but also B, some impact. And that comes back into the design point of view. We need to see houses with solar panels on their roofs in TV shows. We need to see people carrying keep cups. We need to see people with reusable shopping bags. We need people when they go for shopping therapy to go to an op shop. Not all the time, right? But just we need to have it all in a mix. And I think that talking to all the designers and the producers has made a big difference to this thinking. And if you want to see a show, an Australian show that is doing this, like, you know, as all of you, I know all you will all sit and weep when you watch Bump. It's an Australian TV series. It's on Stan. It's worth watching. Claudia Caravan has made it with her beautiful friend who's a writer. And it literally is everything we believe in on a television screen. And so it's just nice for our own souls to watch it because it's not goody-goody or, you know, it's a beautiful series. But what they do, especially in the last series about bushfire, is just phenomenal. So good to watch. Mainstreaming the story. So when we are doing our stuff, right, we just got to really make sure that even when we're not being pointed about change, that we're seeing beautiful pictures of nature of our areas. We're connecting people visually with nature, that we're also connecting them with this idea of mainstream. So if you've got a photo shoot with council or your business, kind of start thinking about if you're in, we do it when we do leftover cooking workshops. We have a compost caddy next to us. But if you're doing a picture of your team in their office, do it in the kitchen with the caddy behind, right? Like it's that thing of, can we keep telling the story of change even when we're not telling the story of change? Be a bit stealth about it. That's all cool. Waste as a change maker. Hey, good sentence. I really love this idea that we use waste as a change maker. That we're not sort of ignoring the fact, and that waste can change people's connection with their relationship with waste if they can change to an identity that is related to waste. The transference starts happening in other places, and waste's a goodie because it's in all of our homes. It's all of our workplaces. I did a project with Fires to Flourish, which was a Paul Ramsey thing after the fires, and I got chosen as a community person, not as a business, to talk about fire as a change maker. And you just kind of see how that could be possible, because the way that we have to deal with fire now is different, so it's a change maker, same as the waste. And so while we're going to do this workshop for us today, and there's not going to be heaps of me yarning, there's going to be heaps of you doing stuff together, what I want you to know is that this is something that you can do in your own communities. And I think it's something that I want to say we need to do in our own communities. I mentioned it in the first conversation, that a survey isn't the only way that we can get community to participate in these things. And sometimes it's scary, but I feel like we're at that time now where community isn't scary, it's community, and that we're all part of it as well. So what we're going to do today is a technique that we're going to do that you can do with staff, teams, other people, community, so that we're basically giving us a way to be able to do deep and profound work with community that brings solutions to the table from their hearts and their experiences, and brings them to be able to be moved forward in a way within community, and then for community to vote on, prioritise, bring them up, and is specifically with council, bring them to council in a way that can be received by council, and for council to have an obligation to fund some of them, so that we don't have a flow from council ideas to people all the time, that the flow we turn around. If we're going to have a circular economy, let's have a circular community economy, where we get the ideas from community, we bring them into council, who then enacts and enables them and brings them back through, but that they're enacted by community. So that's putting community at the centre of better change. I'm a bit of a fan of words. Better change, it's great, right? Because it's like, it's better change, like as in very good. And also it's like better change, right? Because if we don't, we're stuffed. No, and I also think better is a great Australian iconic, laconic term. Yeah, better go down the shop and get some milk on the way home. Yeah, better remember to pick up the kids from school. It's beautiful, right? I better get my head around that recycling thing. There's something that is less judgmental or I don't know, picky, or it's just an Australian laconicness, yeah? Better do that. And people do this. They nod their head, yeah, better do that. They're making an agreement with themselves. Their body is reinforcing it, you know, for better or for worse. I don't know what it is, but for somehow it's a good thing. So that notion of better change is kind of cool. Change the storytellers, change the world. If we want diverse voices, if we want our whole community to be part of this, we've got to change the storytellers. And so that's why community is good, because you're going to get, and that's the other thing. When we talk about doing community gathering that does this, you've got to go the extra yards. Putting our thing on Facebook saying, yes, council's going to be doing a community participatory session on waste, and we'd love you all to come. And then go, how come we got all the same people? How come we didn't get any multicultural voices? How come there was no one with a disability at any of these things, right? And then we know that what the truth of the matter is, that just putting something once on Facebook or in a newsletter doesn't do the job. We have to, even no matter where we're change making, when we have to ask the question. We have to go the extra yards to invite. And especially when it comes to mob. We have to find out the best way that we can talk through different people, to ask different people to come. And also we have to make Indigenous community feel safe to come. And part of the deal for that is to have an Indigenous flag flying, and to have a welcome and an acknowledgement of country and a welcome to country, because that sends very clear messages to mob that they're welcome and they're safe. And I didn't know that until I did some work with communities who were predominantly Indigenous people, First Nation people, who didn't come to things. And they said, we didn't know we were welcome. And I go, what would work? What would help? If you raise a flag, we know we're welcome. Pretty simple. Motivate, innovate, educate, of course. That was what we were here for. Does everyone feel a bit motivated? Been motivated by the conference? Is there some motivation? Is there some education been going on? Has anyone learned anything? What about innovation? Have you seen something innovative? Or are we inertiating at the moment? Anybody want to say anything they've been blown away with from an innovation point of view at this conference? Yep. Interesting to hear, isn't it? And I was talking to the scientists who were saying that they're working with the fireys who got, they've got a lot more PFAS in their systems than, even though we have, they've got a lot more. Using cholesterol drugs to strip that PFAS out of fireys' systems. I mean, it still goes into biosolids, but anyway. That was news to me. I don't know if I'd missed it, but that was news. The fact that people are looking at different ways to solve that problem. Any other innovations? It's interesting, innovation. It requires a lot of energy to be innovative. Anyway, we'll get to there. All right, so what we've been doing at our stand is this growing a garden of ideas, and we've got it here. We've had our piece of paper out, and people have come along and written what ifs. And so we've got this big garden of ideas that lots of people have put ideas on, and we didn't have any requirements. We didn't say you can only put big ideas or only things that have got to do with government. So we've got like a really big range, and a lot of them are little ideas because a lot of them were sparked by someone saying something at a session and someone making a link and going, what if? A lot of repair conversation seems to have come up on the Garden of Ideas. Interesting, because it kind of tells us that that's what's resonating. There's a story of going back to the waste hierarchy and going back to the big chunky bit of the hierarchy, which is that rethink part, the reduce part, the repair part. And I think, I think that's where we've all been sitting, but I think there's a lot more thinking about that going on. What here there is at the moment. So I'm going to explain the process, and then we're going to we're going to do some individual stuff and some work stuff. What if? So in this process, which is the theory of change, and it's nothing new about this, and you probably do it yourself, but it's just nice to do and nice to remember how powerful it is. So in the what if section, you explain the idea. And I gave the example in the session, and this is just a project that I pitched during the fire process, so it's not a waste story. I said, what if seeds had wheels and could grow the future? And then the next one was by putting seed libraries inside the mobile book libraries that visit outside of the centre. So what if there was like a seed library, it could drive out, and when they got there, there was a little mobile seed library, and people could leave seeds there and they could come and swap seeds. And also that the people who donated seeds could make a little video telling the story of the seed. This is a pumpkin, I've grown it for 17 generations. Well, how I do it is this. So they're telling the story of the seed, which is on an iPad that goes in the mobile library because that's a book place, right, a story place. And so we have an exchange. The mobile libraries predominantly stay in one LGA, so we can trade seeds safely in that. It's not always a national story. We can't post them to each other, because biosecurity becomes but with mobile libraries we can. So what if we did that? Then this will lead to, and for this instance, we had communities that were decimated. This will lead to pollinators being planted, habitat being renewed, and in my instance, children growing seeds that will then reseed the community when it's ready. So in insurance companies, don't cover gardens. And so the kids in this project, which is called Reseed, pretty easy, they go and have a survey. The school kids go and talk to people and go, what plants would you like to get back happening? And then the schools grow the plants in the nursery, because growing takes time and healing takes time. And kids are often disassociated from the process of recovery because you can't build a house, you can't raise a house, they get in the way. And this was a project that we thought in recovery that kids could be involved in, that mattered. And then 12 months down the track, when they've grown all these beautiful plants, that there's a gifting and a giveaway of those. They go back to their families and say, hey, we grew you these trees. And they've got some ideas about how they can survive the next fire or the next flood, and they share that information with the people that they are giving the plants to. So it's giving the kids responsibility, it's giving them some agency, and also it's giving them the time to have some mental health. What would it look like if it was wildly successful? Well, in this instance, it's the 22nd of October, which is World Planting Day, and the kids of Woodburn are out on the riverbank. They've got stands and stalls and information, they've drawn posters up that they've got on easels, and the whole community is coming out for the plant swap day. People are gathering and talking to kids about what they've been doing. The kids are explaining to the families that they've done the surveys with how to do it, and there's a celebration. They've even put together a little band, and they're playing a song that they've written about planting. And together the community take their plants, and then along the riverbank on the same day, they plant out all of the pollinators and all of the habitat, welcoming the species, other species back to town. That's what it would look like if it was wildly successful. And this part of the process is, as change makers, as storytellers, can we imagine the future? Can we imagine it so much that we can make it communicatable? Can we start thinking about this is what we want it to look like, and then backscaping, how do we get it to be, how do we get it to happen, back to today. So we futurescape, we make the story, and then we go, okay, that's what we want. And so this is a process that the community, it's a beautiful community process, right? Because they get to, they have to take some leaps of faith to find this, what does it look like when it's wildly successful? But then they also, with the form that is given, don't just lob that on you as the person whose job it is to do the job, right? We ask them to think about it, to go, what steps, what people, how does this work, you know? And so so basically what they're building is a pitch, yeah? Like a project pitch. So that, and everybody's doing it on the same form and the same thing. So when as a community, they get together, they can pitch to each other. And then as a community, they can then have the names of the project up around the space or on a table, and then you can give them $100 fake monies or a post-it or whatever you feel like, and the community can go, I love that project. It's not my project. My project's on the table as well. I love that project. We gave them $100 in fake $20 because I didn't want to give my whole $100 because I didn't just want one project to happen. So I could vote with my $20 fake monies, put them on the projects that I thought were going to be great, and then you count up how much monies are on there. That's not the real budget, just how much monies are on there, and that's how we did a really fun and easy, imaginable way to get a priority list from the community of what their priorities were. That's just my seed one, what I just talked about. Are they tiny, small writing? That's all right, I've got a million of them. And we've already got them. This was in case nobody actually did a what if, but we've got lots of them, right? So this is the idea, this is the thing that I just talked about. So it's a one page, and the first page you would give to community or the people or the workshop or the group, and I've got them printed out for you so you can take them home. And this basically is the big pitch that they would finally do, but they do it step by step. It might not happen in one session, right? It might be something that happens over them going to groups. What we did in Fires to Flourish, even before I did this, we had some principles that we were all wanting to work on together. And before we did the what if, I went and had to canvass my own community to hear what they wanted to do. So because we've all of a sudden, we pick people to come, or people who come to the meeting are part of the community in different ways from each other. And so I went and talked to my I had a little meeting at our hall. I said, the Paul Ramsay Foundation, I'm doing this project. I'd love to talk to, people. I went to their houses and knocked on their door and said, well, how about we have a cup of tea? I'd like to, they're my friends. They're not just strangers, they're our community. There's only 12 houses in town. It was pretty easy for me. I knocked on their door and said, I'm doing this project about the fires, or, we're doing a project about waste. I want to know what you think so that I can take it back. And then, so you're letting the community do the research in a much more personal way than we can possibly do as council or as a change maker who's doing a workshop or however you want to phrase this, in your own workplace. You might get someone, if you're in a big workplace, you might get someone from one department who comes and then you ask them to canvass the other people in the group. And then this is the blank form, and I've got them too, and that's what we're going to be working on today. It's a little bit simpler because I just went, you don't have to know everything because we're just playing with the idea, right? So, what if, by, then, what does it look like? There's another couple of steps in there that you will get easily. And then we'll play the It's 2034 game that I'm obsessed with, that if you've been to the stand over the last couple of years, we say, welcome to Waste 2034. I remember you were in the workshop with us in 2034. We were in the workshop together in 2024. What happened to that project that you thought up in the last 10 years? And then you can do the jump to, well, Cate, you won't believe it, It started slowly. I didn't think anything was going to happen, and then 2026, finally we got the community thing happening. And then it just took off like wildfire. Like we had 72 projects that came in through that process, and we ended up funding 6 of them. And the one I love the most is, doesn't matter, you make it up. The one I love the most is, it's all right, it's all good. It's all good. You know what's really good about that? It's a downhill slant. You don't even have to think about it. It's only water. So yeah, I think, it's about this being able to just have a go at imagining something amazing. If you were here last year, you would have seen the guy from Tweed Council. He got up and he said, on his video, he said, great. Actually, I'm just here visiting my mates because 2 years ago I won lotto. I was able to retire. I've got a house on the beach. Like, that was his futurescape, right? He disrupted my system, and I loved it. It was really cool. And then what I'm hoping is, if we do this together here now, and we're doing this process, you can either pick your own idea, we can roll out the piece of paper that people have had ideas on, we're looking at them deeply. It was Gail, last year you spoke to me about the last session, didn't you? And I really took that on board. And that's why the last session today is about a statement from here, right? And so this is a kind of process way that we can get to looking at these ideas that people have put down on the paper. The killer statement is probably not going to be here yet. Hopefully the statement that we come away with gets evolved in the last session. But I think this process for us today is to say to ourselves, what are the what-ifs that the community here, our community, and in the swapping out of the word industry that Costa, we talked about, that our community, and that's not to undermine the economy of this community being an industry, right? This is just to talk about as a community. Our community have put some ideas down. You might want to choose one of them. You might have one in your own mind. I'm trying to get us to really examine some of the bigger thinking, right? There's lots of good little ideas here that might spurt. For that to happen, we'll need to have these other things in place, that the big levers across the top. But I also want to say that our voice from here, from this conference, doesn't have to be all about government and policy. It might be, what is our intention to community? what is our intention to the waste hierarchy, seeing there is so many comments about repair, maybe the what if is about that rethink top end of the hierarchy. So I'm asking you to do lots of things in this workshop. I'm asking you to really think about this being a process that you can use in your own communities, in your own workplaces, this theory of change. I'm asking you to give that a go. I'm asking you to look at things that the conference have already bought, and is there some commonality so that last 1 hour session this afternoon, we don't do this part. We do this part now because we've only got an hour, and then I'll bring the findings of us as representatives of the community to that, so we can keep moving up to this intention statement. Does that make sense? Great. All right, so first point is we're going to roll out the paper. You can have a look at what people have been saying. There's blanks up here where you can fill out the what if case studies, go a little bit further with them. And then there's also the recipe for the what if form, because, I can put it up, actually. That one? Yeah, I've got them printed, so you can have a look at that. And then hopefully what we'll do, because this is a good long workshop, also took the point last year that workshops are not for talking, workshops are for doing, and that's what we're going to be doing. But I might ask my dear friend Costa. Yes. Right, just can you come up and say something motivating? Or educating or something, a couple of minutes just to put us into the world. Can you not mention wiping your ass this time? Oh. No, you can. That's right. That was one of my favourite lines.
That was a nice touch. Thank you, Cate.
No worries.
I was just at it was just funny, the EP of our show. I said, I'll call in 10. And then she just replied, 10 hours, 10 days. And I said, 10 steps. I thought that was a nice way of thinking around a challenge of getting back to someone. But I was just at a conversation which was all about FOGO. And the interesting thing, and this is what I want to thread into this conversation that Cate's talking about. We're in a relationship. Everything about this conference is about a relationship. So we're in a relationship with residents, we're in a relationship with consumers, we're in a relationship with buyers. And the interesting thing is, we've got a bit of wind. The interesting thing is, if you look at it from a business point of view, that makes this relationship. So you think of FOGO. Suddenly, as a council, you've got a business relationship with every owner of that bin. You're suddenly in business. They're a shareholder. They're a stakeholder in this business. Yet, all they do is just that part. Yet, it's the most important part. And we've got a whole industry sitting at the mouth of the Clarence saying, oh, hang on, there's something in the water. And, oh, hang on, got my little bloody net over here. I'll get that out of the stream and I'll get this out. When the shareholders or the stakeholders are upstream, which is a narrow point, and if I'm dealing with them here where they're putting it into the bin, and the same applies with the manufacturers and the producers of these rubbish products that don't have a repair capacity, all of these things. Like, we were talking about industry, like, industry has very strict words and very fixed outcomes. And that outcome is us running around trying to patch the river, trying to catch the river, instead of dealing with it upstream. But what I want to say is, when we talk purely just in industry terms, and the reason I wanted to bring up that idea in the keynote about community is that we're across all levels. We're not just industry. So my thought there from a community point of view is we're not dealing with you. I don't want to look at you as a shareholder. I want to look at you as a careholder. This is a small change of language. But when we change that language, we open up a whole different relationship. And whether that's working as a group of councils, whether that's working as a specific educator.
And give them, like, I don't know if they have it, but what if they have, like, the harder to recycle?
Okay, are we at
Okie dokie, as usual. As usual. We've got a little bit of little bit of time. Like 1 minute. Damn! I'm so bad at time management. But, you know, the other thing too is some of this is not so much us having to find a resolution, because we're going to find this resolution, you know, we're going to have this conversation at 4 o'clock in the big room. But does anybody have, like, I don't know, I just love the fact that we get to talk to each other about stuff, you know, like across groups and across communities, and that's as relevant as everything else that's happening. And hearing other people's experiences and going, oh, okay, that's interesting. But does anybody have something happening, something happened there that they'd like to share because they think it's a good thing for us to have in the wrap-up? What about Group Simon? How did you go? Step up, come on. Yeah, come up. Come up and have a little microphone moment.
We sort of talked about what would happen if what we call deliberative democracy. So people came together as a small community and decided on what sort of waste management system they would create. I'll say I had a bit of an advantage in this because I worked with communities in India to set up waste management systems where they didn't have any. So I kind of have a bit of experience with this. But we said that we might have more things like community gardens, repair centres, community-owned reusable containers, just because if people are having to deal with their own waste, they're going to try and minimise it as much as possible. I think that was one of our outcomes. But we'd also have more local food production, which would minimise waste a lot. I think half of our waste in our red bins these days is from the packaging of foods, which has to sit on shelves for 3 months, which has to travel from far away. So this would reduce a lot of that waste as well. And this would eventually result in less reliance on waste infrastructure. So as this system moved on, you wouldn't need landfills, you wouldn't need as many trucks taking hard to use waste further away. We had, why is this needed? Well, one is the material scarcity. There's not using all those materials out there. Plus just the carbon emissions in the production process of everything that we make. About 90% of the emissions come from production of things that we use, not in the waste stage. So really cutting out the production of things is where you want to get a lot of your emissions from. So who needs to be involved? We thought the community is the main thing. One of the reasons I think that's hard is because most of us grew up in a system where we don't feel responsible for waste in a day-to-day setting. It's something we think is someone else's responsibility because we've all just paid to do it for most of our lives. So we need to get people involved, and that would probably be one of the difficult tasks. But we also need to have people who have some knowledge that can easily disseminate it out to the community. This is about things like what are some best practices, what happens to materials, and what it goes into making these materials and the things we use in a day-to-day as well. And that's about as far as we got. We only got to about 7 because we got really sidetracked because it's such an interesting activity. And we had all sorts of ideas come out about different countries and what they were doing. So it's a good start, but we haven't gotten to guiding principles. Guys, do you want to just make it up as we're talking now? What would you think our guiding principle would be? Sharing knowledge, I like that. Yeah. Yeah, and I would add to that also the responsibility. I think having that responsibility at a communal level makes people think about it in a different way and makes people easier. It makes it easier for people to want to change their behaviour because they see that the burden of doing it one way is going to be a lot more on them than if they did it this way. So that would be something.
Thank you. Give
Good.
her an applause. And to me, I kind of go to. So up there, what if there was not just one story of waste in Australia? I suppose that's what the big, this big story up above all of that. What if small communities or communities wanted to trial things? What if we allowed community to stack in the resources to do really good trials, whether it's in small regional communities, for example, at the Torres Strait on Thursday Island, something like this would be incredible, yeah, because they can't do anything at the moment, right? So these sorts of ideas are sort of like, what would happen if we gave as much credence and recognition and value to the small projects that are making trials and doing things as we transition from certain ways? Like, because I understand that we go, all right, might be hard to do across every community, but what if we had a different approach, if we understood and accepted that there's going to be many ways to deal with this and we resource smaller things. Anybody else? And then we should go to lunch. But what I want to say too, while someone's thinking whether they want to have a yarn, is even when we've been talking today, because we're in that zeitgeist at 4 o'clock if you're coming, between now and then thinking of that next, that one level up thing. What if we weren't so stuck on certain ways to do things? What if we could trial and test? And I know we sort of do, but what if it was like a really big part of the story in the next few years moving forward? Like, what if it was considered to be an imperative rather than a side hustle, that innovation thing? Anyone else have a little yarn that they want to tell? You're all hungry now. I know, it's Thursday. You went to the party last night, didn't you? I know. Do you think you feel a little bit more up for the conversation at 4 o'clock because we've just taken a pause and had a look at things? Do you feel any more? So, I don't know. Oh, yeah, come, speak, snowy mountains.
We fancied the idea of the convenient lifestyle and chatted about ways that we could change mindsets around that. And I think we all kind of just went off on our own little journey from that. That was our umbrella. Apologies. That was our umbrella idea. So I can just talk about what journey I went on, I guess. I just said that what if we change the mindset of convenience and it will lead to a more conscious journey to habits and change behaviour. Why is it needed? Well, the not my problem and out of sight, out of mind attitude is definitely not helping anybody. And we need a less unconscious attitude towards waste. We would achieve it by knowledge sharing, understanding the impact we all have on waste generation and change, and starting small but thinking big, transparency, repetition and gratefulness. This would eventually result in a reignited care for each other and the environment, a change in consumerism, focus on repairing, lengthening the life cycles of products, and a demand for supply chain transparency on everything. This would be an everyone activity, so we're all involved in this. And then it would look like utopia. And then I just had a little diagram down here of some contact lenses that show people the impact of things that they do and products that they use and what they do with it after they... Yeah.